I'm a member of Greenpeace. I'm a member of the Sea Shepherd. I've narrated some documentaries on saving whales. I'm very much into whales and into those species that are about to become extinct. Whales probably not extinct, but why certain nations can continue to kill whales for the meat when they can eat something else. And everything's so screwed up in our environment that given half a chance, you see that these, like in San Clemente Island, you see an area that's set aside. It becomes a fish protected area. It comes back within 10 years. The fish that are not being taken because of the protection that they have now begin to migrate and fill up the emptiness that the ocean is mostly. And so whales and cod, for God's sakes, they overfished the cod. They knew they were overfishing the cod. Now the cod aren't big enough to show the young cod where to migrate. I mean, it's so complex. The wolves introduced in Yellowstone drive the elk and the deer out of the streams and up to the pastures, because now the elk and the deer think, oh, I better not stand around. I better get someplace where I can run. They discover that because they release the wolves and because the deer and the elk go up, the bushes alongside the river are able to grow. They're not being trampled. The insects come to the bush, the birds come to and suddenly nature's healed. So whales play a huge part in that, and we should all be very much aware of the interconnectedness of our environment. So much for that. I ride and breed and train horses. I was at a horse show last week. I won a championship there. I will be competing all year round in 3 different breeds.
What do you think of the state of science fiction on television today? Do you watch any of it, or how has it changed since?
Well, what is on television that's science fiction? I don't think there is. But there isn't a real series that's on television I know of. What? I don't think so. But what's happened, of course, is the computer graphics are reaching such an extraordinary point that they've taken over the magic, or they are the magic of movies, and great. We can do things in the movies just by imagining them, and then some wonderful artist draws it and it comes alive. That's the magic of science fiction. And yet, having said that, the other part of the magic of science fiction is the word and your imagination about what that is without seeing the picture. So I'm in the midst of doing a science fiction comic book, which will be part of a program of filming of the comic book and making it come alive. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm brewing that has to do with science fiction.
Does your wife come down to Comic-Con with you?
Generally not.
Generally not.
No.
Do you guys have a favorite date night activity you like to do?
Daytime activity?
Date night or
Date night?
activity?
Oh, yeah.
What's your favorite thing to do?
Oh, make love to my wife.
What do you love about her? Like, how did you know she was the one?
How did I know she was the one?
Yeah.
She returned my hug. She's a really extraordinary individual who's very intelligent and very funny and very beautiful. That combination's hard to come by, and I was very lucky to find it.
Do you have a favorite TV show, either one on now, and also
Dancing with the Stars.
And why?
Because first of all, they're beautiful people doing beautiful things, and then if you watch closely, you can see an evolvement of the relationships just by the eyes, the gesture, in subtle ways you see these people changing, not only physically and getting better as dancers, but the relationships change. And I've become good friends with Tom Bergeron. And so we go out to dinner not as frequently as I'd like, and I get all the gossip.
Are you going to be on for the season?
Well, they've asked me quite frequently, but I don't have the time. It's 4 months of arduous work.
What about a favorite movie and why?
Favorite movie? I really enjoyed the Life of Pi this year more than anything else. I find myself watching films at home. I've got the mechanical means of showing it really well and sound, and so I haven't been to a movie theater in a long time.
You've been asked so many questions over the years about Star Trek. Is there anything you wish people would ask you about more in regards to that phenomenon?
Many people put that question. They want me to ask a question of myself that I've never answered before.
But is there an element of it that you think is
does Leonard Nimoy wear a jockstrap? I don't know.
But is there an element that you think is underappreciated or misunderstood?
No. I mean, over the years, pretty much everything's been examined. But I don't mind answering the same questions. I can understand your interest and appreciate it. Don't mind answering.
Extensive experience in sci-fi. What is your favorite, and what was the most difficult?
Recently, in this last couple of years, I've been out on tour. I opened on Broadway a one-man show called Shatner's World, and I wrote it and acted it, one-man show. An hour and a half on Broadway, and by myself, and then I went on tour. I've been to 40 cities, and I'll probably go to 10 more in January. So 50-city tour of a one-man show. But every night that I went out there, especially in the beginning, when the people would stand up and applaud, I was overwhelmed by the feeling in front of the people and the affection that flowed across the footlights was very meaningful to me. And that show, because it's my story, is meaningful. So to perform it and to feel that it's being taken the way it was meant to be, and getting the laughs and getting the tears, and then ending with this standing ovation, you can understand how extraordinary it was. So it was very difficult to do. I had stomach flu or stomach poisoning, I'm not quite sure, on the opening on Broadway, and I was sick for about a week, in which I couldn't leave the 3-foot radius of the bathroom, but had to go on stage, that sort of thing. It was very difficult, but I kept thinking, one day I'll be through this and I'll be talking to a large group of journalists and tell them about being sick on opening on Broadway. And I was trying to take that historical point of view, and here I am telling you about it.
In Star Trek 6, there was a point where you moved your horse sideways to speak to Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
Was that something that you asked to be done because you knew?
Moving a horse sideways means the horse moves off your leg, and it's a very key button that a horse has to have. Horse has to back up, has to go forward, has to move to the side. In reiners, which is what I compete a lot in, they have to do things like this. 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 And they have to come in and slide 30 feet to a stop. That's reiners. So moving sideways is part of, it's like breathing. I've spent a good part of my adult life riding horses. Once I had some money, I started riding, and competitively, and I had to learn to do that. I didn't grow up on a horse. So horsemanship is a spiritual thing almost for me.
Are we ever going to see a director's cut of
See what?
Star Trek 5? A director's cut?
Of Star Trek 5? I haven't been asked to do that.
I mean, they did it for Robert Wise. They let
Right.
Nicholas Meyer do it.
Right.
We're going to see your turn.
Well, There hasn't been a demand. You and I are leading that group of people.
Well, I know that the original concept changed so much during
Yeah,
the making of it. I
that's
didn't
the
know if
truth.
they would ever let you have the money to go back and do it.
Well, going back, the story I tell about Star Trek V is my one-line idea was Star Trek goes in search of God. Then I ran into flack. Who's God? What God? We're not going to alienate people. And then somebody came up with the idea, well, what happens if it's an alien who thinks he's God? And then an alien who thinks he's the devil, by projection, there's a God. And in order to get that movie made, I agreed to it. And that was a compromise. And the difference between making a compromise and being political, and being political, or standing on your standards, where do you do that? Where do you, the editor says, cut that line, and you say, that's my whole story. I'm sorry, you got to get rid of those words. Do you say, no, I'm not going to do it? Do you say, okay, I'll do it? So we're making compromises and political judgments, or standing on our standards all our life. Everything we do is that. How do you make those decisions? And that's what I had to learn on Star Trek V. I didn't, with $30 million, it was fairly public.
But you've gotten a lot of mistakes though, because with
A lot of what?
A lot of things that have happened, like with your Star Trek books, where you brought Kirk back.
Yes.
And also, even when you went back to when Kirk and Spock first met, and then of course they went a whole new direction.
Right.
Does that give you the freedom to do other things in these books? I mean, do you enjoy
Well,
that?
they allowed me to. A lot of those books, Star Trek books that I wrote, are autobiographical. Things that happened to me, I laid on Kirk, and so it was the setting was futuristic. That was easy to do, but the indigenous story came out of my experience.
Are we going to get to see any more of these Star Trek?
They haven't asked me, and I think that phase is over, I would imagine.
I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. I enjoyed writing them.
If you could give yourself any role in the new Star Wars movie, what would it be?
Star Wars movie?
Yeah.
The lead.
A starship captain.
Yeah, well.
Charismatic guy.
No, yeah. Harrison Ford progressed.
Recently did an episode of Hot in Cleveland. Can you talk about that experience?
TVLand said we're doing a stunt and doing this live. We're doing the first show of the season. We're going to do it live. Will you play the part? So they paid me well, and they asked me to do it, and it seemed like fun. So, and I know Valerie Bertinelli. Valerie is her property backs up on mine, so we're neighbors. Her backyard and my backyard. And she said, there's some trees I have to cut down. So if you do it, I won't cut down the trees. So I did it. It was great fun. I had fun doing the part, and she cut the trees down. Typical Hollywood. Once they got you, they got you.
You can return to that show? In that role?
It was fun. I sort of, worked up a character. If they asked me, I would consider it, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to see it.
Yeah.
Kind of a role.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Now, I skipped the psych room to be here and interview you.
Did you?
So, are you going to be back there next season? Have you been asked about that?
Where?
Back to psych.
Oh, Psych. I don't know. They're here, huh?
Yeah, they're.
I don't know. That was a good show. I enjoyed doing that. They haven't asked me, or they asked me, and I think I wanted too much money. Is what I think it was.
I think it's their last season.
This?
Yeah.
You were in phenomenal shape. I saw you on Craig Ferguson jumping over couches and grabbing his knee.
Well, I was desperate. He was chasing me.
Is there a recovery period after something?
I ride in competition because I'm a movie star. I have a little more money than the average contestant. I have more than one horse that I ride. In fact, I ride 5 or 6 horses. Nobody rides 5 or 6 horses. in competition. So in a class of 100 people, I'll be there 5 or 6 times.
Of course, it's keeping young.
That's my opinion.
Are there any other projects that you have going on that you're most excited about? That you like?
I got a wonderful movie script
Okay.
called The Shiva Club. I've got a wonderful reality show concept that I want to do. This podcasting that I'm doing called Brown Bag Wine Tasting can lead to all other kinds of things. The artistry of taste, if you will, is really intriguing. I mean, why does a wine explode in your mouth and then have subtle tones and then an aftertaste? So in the Brown Bag Wine Tasting, I got Dave Kaz, the saxophonist, a great musician, and I did a Brown Bag Wine Tasting with Dave Kaz. And I said, I don't want to hear about vanilla and blueberry overtones and the legs. I want to hear what you think of this wine with a saxophone. Takes a saxophone out and he plays the taste of the wine. That's the kind of thing I'm doing.
Can you talk a little bit about the best day of your life ever?
The best day of my life?
And why?
You're onto that, aren't you?
Yeah. We go deep.
We go deep.
We do.
Well, the best day of my life was going deep. About 150 feet down to a submarine in a tank, seeing the vegetation and the animal life, and going into a submarine and having limited time at 150 feet, you don't have too much time down there. The magic of scuba diving was a great day.
Nice. And what other things did you see while you were down there?
I saw a girl in a bikini. My wife. Yeah. And I saw a snake. I saw a turtle. I saw sharks, basking. I saw sea cucumbers, a much maligned entity, and I saw a whatchamacallit, with the wings and the tail, a manta ray,
And where did
a
you
stingray.
Where did you
Manta
do
ray.
this?
It was either a manta ray or a stingray. No?
Where did you do this scuba diving?
Hawaii. You good?
Now you mentioned that you are doing a comic book. Is there any chance you'll ever return to the Tech World series?
That's an interesting question. The tech books that I did were bought by Universal, and I made a series called Tech War and a couple of 4 movies of Tech War. All this time later, somebody says they'd like to work with me on a comic book of Tech War. So we try and find who owns Tech War, and we never could get a decent answer. But I did write a couple of books called Man of War, which involved the planet Mars and workers who had been there 50 years and lived underground, had families. And now the young people, the youth that were the children of those workers that had come there, wanted independence, and they were in rebellion. And I then followed the American Revolution on Mars with the young, and that's Man of War. So instead of, after months of trying to find out how I can get Tech War back, we're doing comic books on Man of War.
How do you juggle so many different projects at the same time? Because you're doing a lot of acting, you do a lot of writing. How do you do that?
I get up early.
Last question, guys.
Well, that's true. Good for you. It's a play on the word Man of War, which is a battleship, and Man of War, who's the leading character, who's a diplomat.